Welcome to the West Michigan Marketing Show, where we spotlight marketing leaders and business innovators making an impact in our community. I am Rebecca VanDenBerg, and in this episode, I am thrilled to introduce my friend Carla Flanders of CMF Marketing and Events. Carla specializes in marketing, promotions, project management, and event management. She brings years of experience to the table, and today we'll explore her journey, her passions, and how she helps West Michigan businesses and organizations thrive. So let's dive in. So Carla, you and I have known each other about, was it 3 years, I think?
Yeah,
So
a couple of years. Yeah.
and we've worked on a couple projects together. So I'm excited to I'm excited to talk a little more about the event stuff because I know that's your specialty. But yeah, so tell me about how you got into a career in marketing. Like, what's your story there?
Yeah. So I thought a lot about this question because I was like, oh, that could be a long answer, but I'll try to condense it down. But I actually have a degree in organizational communications and environmental science with a minor in Spanish. So people are like, what are you going to do with that? Like,
Wow.
that's a lot. Yeah. And right out of college, I actually worked for the AmeriCorps, which is like the Peace Corps here in the United States. And I taught groundwater education to migrant farm workers. So I wrote the book in Spanish about it, visited a lot of different farm zones and did a lot of communication. And I thought, oh, this is so awesome. This wraps up my entire degree and everything. Well, AmeriCorps is only a 12-month program. It pays basically nothing. And as I, got further into it, I just found my passion more in the communication marketing end of things and putting these pieces together and promoting the program. And so I kind of started leaning more towards that. I'm muting momentarily because, of course, the dog is barking. Let's see.
Oh, we can't hear it. You're okay.
Okay. Yeah, FedEx is here. That's always a fun thing.
Life. It's life
Yep.
from working from home. I mean,
Yep.
It's what it is.
I know. So as I was saying, I lean more into the communication and marketing ends of things. So
Okay.
CMF Marketing was actually born in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about 5 years. And then I worked full time at a local chamber of commerce.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2020, when things went a little sideways, I decided, let's get back to my roots. Let's get back to what I love. Independent contracting, working with other people in the marketing realm, and really helping out small to medium-sized businesses. So as I mentioned, I can kind of hop in as a marketing director. I can help put together a marketing plan. I can make sure it's fully implemented. I work with a lot of different companies to pull the whole piece together. And then my specialty really is events. There's not a lot of people in the West Michigan market that has the event experience I have that combines with the marketing and also fundraising aspect of it. So that's kind of my sweet spot.
How did you get into, where'd you cut your teeth in events? Was it back when you were with the chamber?
Well, it's funny. I've always been an event organizer without realizing I was an event organizer. But I really, really tapped into it when I worked at the Tulip Time Festival in Holland, Michigan.
Okay.
And I worked there for about 8 years, and I was their marketing director, but I also managed a few key events as well. And I always knew, kind of growing up, everybody's like, well, if you could have a dream job, what would it be? And at the time, I was like, I would love to work for VanDenBerg and produce shows. Like, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And the timing, wasn't right and all these different things. But then when I started working for the Tulip Time Festival, I was like, I can do this. This is totally in my wheelhouse. And so that's kind of where I feel like I cut my teeth on it the most. And from there, that's when I, after I was done working there, I created CMF Marketing. I did a ton of work with Downtown Holland, with Zealand and Grand Rapids for Art Prize. Actually, when it first got started, I helped out with the UICA. Their Oddball. It was a ball that was called Oddball. It was really fun. And then, I moved to the Lakeshore. And so I always feel like I'm in this like trifecta of being from Grand Rapids, having worked in Holland for 8 years, and now I live in the Muskegon area. And so I have my my roots planted in each community.
Yeah.
So I know a lot about all of those areas, and I just love West Michigan.
Awesome. Awesome. What's the most recent event that you have something you've done that's more people might recognize most recently?
Well, I think there's a couple that are more centrally located. Like there's a Harvest Fest that I've done here in Muskegon the last 2 years. And that's an event that's about between 200 and 250 people. It's a fundraiser for the Muskegon Rotary. And that was the most recent, but probably the biggest since Tulip Time that I've done was called the Lakeshore Art Festival. I did that for about 10 years. And that was a nationally recognized, very large 2-day event that hosted about 350 units. So what I mean by units, it was fine art, it was crafts, it was food vendors, it was a children's lane. We had, at the peak of it before COVID, we had about 50 to 60,000 people there for the entire weekend, showing off their work and really supporting artists and crafters. So it was pretty cool.
I'm really curious to know what size team of like administrative coordinators and then volunteers do you need to put on an event like that?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, volunteers in the hundreds, probably 200 to 300 volunteers. But the core group was about 8 to 10 people. And they each took on different zones. So as I mentioned, there was a fine art category. So we had a fine art director. There was a craft section. So we had a craft market manager. We had the children's lane manager. We had a volunteer coordinator, a food coordinator. So yeah, there was maybe 7 or 8 of us that helped out with that event. And then it was run at one point through the Chamber of Commerce, and then it moved to the city. So now it's with the city. It's been with the city for the last few years. And so it's, kind of has this umbrella organization. And then I was the director, and then we had all the different people working with us that have done it for quite a while. I mean, it's a newer version of what we used to be called Muskegon Summer Celebration craft fair, and which people are familiar with that. But we just we changed it to the Lakeshore Art Festival and just blew it out of the park. I mean, it got national recognition. It was in the top 10 list year over year when I was involved with it. And it's a really, really fun, cool event.
Nice. I'm having a couple glitches here technology wise. Hopefully my screen hasn't froze too many times, but I apologize. I do notice that it's glitching just a little today. So
am I freezing on your end?
No, you're not freezing yet. So if I do notice any others, I'll have you repeat something, but so far so good. Apologize for the glitch there, but we're making our way through it. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was current trends. The space of promotion and marketing is always evolving and changing because it's so much tied to technology. What are some of the, in that, 20-year span, what are some of the things obviously have changed, but what do you think is the most exciting trend right now? And I hate to use the word trend, but maybe tool or tactic or strategy. What's the most exciting new thing that you have found during that time period and where we are now?
Right. Yeah. And I'm glad that you kind of mentioned that because, marketing can be trendy, right? There's trends always happening, but I just want to preface this by saying I feel that the true value of marketing is consistency, repetition, and keeping your business, product, or service at the forefront of people's minds. So trends can come and go, but those 3 things are really important for any marketing efforts. But when we're talking in terms of trends in marketing, the big one right now, the hot topic, the big button, right, is AI. Yeah. And a lot of people are using it. A lot of people, it works to their benefit. And for some, it might not have any impact at all. So in marketing, this could help in a number of ways. It just depends on how you might want to use it, and or you could use it for your client, right?
Yeah.
So that's trending right now. Another big one too, which you and I have had multiple conversations about, is user generated content, blogs, personal stories, and quality editorial that's proven and real. So word of mouth, we know, is one of the biggest factors for helping to drive sales. As a matter of fact, just before I hopped on this call, I was talking to somebody and they said, "Oh, have you tried this?" "No, I haven't." "Here, let me send it to you." And she literally just texted it to me. So I'm going to be trying a new product because one of my colleagues told me about it, right? So that, along with short form videos that can be used for social and YouTube, are very popular right now and can help drive traffic to what it is that your service is or what it is your product, and help push that. And then that ties into social media in general, right? So one thing I wanted to say about that is there's always something new trending in social media, right? I mean, there's always some hot thing going on. And if you're able to jump on that positive trend in a quick way, it could be a really great value to a company or organization. There's also negative trends out there too. So obviously you want to avoid those types of social media trends. But if you're nimble and have a good pulse in your social media campaigns, you can hop on those trends and it will draw attention to your business.
So I'm curious, I feel like social media has its own specialty, right?
Yeah.
I don't specialize in it. I refer people out, but I have to be a student of it for making good recommendations. And I wondered if you feel the same, and how do you deal with trying to stay current on what's going on in social media if you don't specialize in it, and how do you navigate those waters?
Yeah. Now, how would I navigate it for my own company, or how would I recommend navigating it for businesses?
For you personally,
Okay.
How do you stay up to date on what's happening, even though it's not your specialty, so you can make good recommendations to your clients?
Yeah. So a couple ways. One, I mean, just industry knowledge. When I see new things come out, I read up on them, or I hear what's going on. I have colleagues that are in the social media space, and I'm actually on a West Michigan Facebook group about social media specifically. And if there's glitches or something going on, we're saying, how do you deal with this, or what happened with this, and kind of talk through some of those as well. For me, I manage, honestly, about 5 or 6 Facebook pages and Instagram accounts for clients, just, posting once or twice a week or something really simple. So by just consistently using it, you'll stay up on it, because this has happened to me before. I had a client, I literally sat down, showed her what to do, how to update something that was on a Friday. On Monday, she went in to try to do it. She's like, "I can't do it. I'm doing it exactly like you told me to." And I was like, "How is that possible?" I went in myself and tried to do it. I was like, "You got to be kidding me. Facebook changed how to do this particular thing." And so then I had to go in and figure out how to work around and make it happen. So, I mean, it could be within hours that you're doing something, and it makes sense.
It's like riding a roller coaster, trying to stay up on
social
media.
Honestly, that's what I like about what I do, is if I have a client that wants to focus just on their social media campaign, I have a few social media colleagues that I work with, and I will recommend them directly. If a client wants a whole encompassing marketing plan that is everything, and or is different pieces implemented at different times or whatever, then I can put together the whole plan and make sure those pieces are in place. But like you said, social media is not my specialty. Can I do it? Yes. Would I want to do it full time? Probably not, but I can do a pretty good job.
It's like the double-headed dragon, right? Or the double-edged two-edged sword, whatever that mythical saying is. And I've got clients, we don't do it anymore. We used to, but I've got clients I've had asked me multiple times in the last few months if they have just a need for social media. Can we add that on to what we're doing for them? And I'm hesitant, I've had some good discussions with them. Like, how about if I help you with strategy and we do a plan, then you can decide who you have actually executed, because they need to have somebody who's really close in touch with the business to either film content, or they have to be involved.
Yes.
Having an outside person do it, you can, but you're going to pay more because you're going to bring them in, film content or write things. Like, it's a weird balance. And so I'm getting more requests for it lately, which is really interesting. It's something I'm keeping my antennas out there, but we're not divulging course just yet.
Right. Yeah. And with some clients, like you said, it's better if they have an internal person that can post and you can provide some guidance or insight, or if they have somebody internally that's going to be dedicated to providing the exterior person content, right? Because it's
Yeah.
great to have a grandiose
Right.
idea. Oh, we can post 3 or 4 times a week. We can do this, we can do that. And then, being a project manager on my end of things, if I'm constantly chasing somebody down for content, that doesn't really help anybody out. I
Right.
like to put together monthly plans and sometimes even quarterly plans for something like this.
Yep.
That way, it's not a conversation every week. Well, what are we going to talk about next week? Or what are we going to talk about next week? And it really depends on what you're trying to push too, right? Do you have a service? Do you have a product? Or do you just want name recognition and to get out there? So you got to figure out what you're trying to
Their
do.
goal.
Right.
I saw randomly a social media, I think she is selling strategy for social media in the coaching space.
Mhm.
And I saw her in one of her videos, she said that she's building her content 12 months in advance. And while I thought that sounded awesome, I wondered if it was really practical. I think being a quarter or
Yeah.
6 months ahead is absolutely where
Yeah.
you need to be.
Yes.
I'm like, how do you deal with relevancy 12 months out?
Well,
Because
so that's a good point with coaching or something like that, because I also had a client that provided a similar service. And what she did was, which did make sense, it was a 6-month plan, and each month she was going to focus on a specific topic related to her business.
Yeah.
And so in that way, yes, if you want to do 12 months of, I have 12 different services I
Yeah,
provide,
yeah.
each month I want to focus in on that. That's good as a general overview. But like we just talked about earlier, if something's trending and it ties in with your business, you want to pivot and hop on that trend and, do a little dance or do a little display or do something that is relevant to your business, right? I mean, it's got to make sense. It's not just got to be like,
it's almost like you can do a 12-month framework.
yes.
But you're not necessarily filming all of your content 12 months
Correct.
in advance. You might be
Yeah.
some evergreen, but then you've left some space for maybe some current event type stuff.
Yes.
So
For sure.
that's a
Yep.
neat way to a hybrid approach. I think that makes way more sense than just straight out. I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And for me, because of the type of work that I do personally, for my social strategy is I talk about what I'm doing for other clients, right? That's what works for me for CMF marketing, because I want other businesses to see what we stand for as a company, how we can help other businesses, and what kind of impact those can make. And the other thing too, and again, I know we've talked about this before, but there's no set rule of how many times you have to post a week, right? For some people, once a week is okay.
Yeah.
For other people, a few times a week is okay. But the one thing I will say is I would not recommend posting less than 1 time a week, because why
Yeah.
have a social media pages if you're not going to use them?
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people, there's a lot of opinions out there, and I think people get caught up in chasing squirrels, right? Like what this expert said or what they saw on Instagram Reels say, when you need to talk to somebody you need to have some strategy and thought behind it in all of your marketing, right? We need to know what the goals are, and then we can assign strategy. And I think what people miss is when someone like you, who you've dealt with multiple clients, you've executed multiple strategies and campaigns, you have seen firsthand what has gotten results and what hasn't. And that kind of person that you can depend on and get real information should be trusted more than the random fly-by-night Instagram expert, right? Or social media guru. So I think that a lot of people, because there's so much information out there. So I think that's what people get lost in.
Yes. And what might work for one company might not work for another. It's not an all-encompassing, oh, well, this pool company did this and I am selling a widget. You're not going to do the same thing.
Exactly.
You can't.
Exactly. Each different business type has different, 100%. Well, let's talk about some recent successes. Could you share maybe a success story from something like a recent campaign that maybe people watching this might be able to learn something from?
Yeah, because I do a lot of different things in different realms, I'm going to give you maybe just a few smaller examples, and then if you'd like to dig into them a little bit deeper, we can. But As I mentioned earlier, I work with small to medium-sized businesses. So I'm really conscious of people's budgets and I want to work within their budgets. And sometimes people just contract me for the media relations I have in the West Michigan market. So I have really good relations with the local TV, radio, billboard companies, and traditional and non-traditional marketing. So I had a client that was opening up a new business in downtown Muskegon. And we started off by just doing press releases. We sent out a press release. And this is what I love about that avenue for some businesses. Again, this is not going to work for everybody, but for this particular one, we sent out a press release about this new business, historic building, downtown Muskegon. They were doing something really, really innovative. Through that one press release, we got all 3 major TV stations to cover the story. MLive covered it and came to the venue and did actual photos. And, people can say what they want about the local media, but I mean, when they're on and they can really do some really great coverage. We had local radio stations there. So again, from this one press release, we got at least 7 to 8 hits from the media. So
Nice.
With that, then we can share it on social. We can use that for advertising. We can use that for a lot of different things. So that was really, really cool and very impactful. And then the venue also does shows. It's an entertainment space. And then most recently here in December, they had a concert. Mm-hmm. And so I had just sent out the release in the fall about the venue, and they could follow it up with another release saying, hey, come check out the show. From that press release, I got the artist got 2 interviews, one a radio interview and one TV interview. So, that can really go far if you're trying to watch your budget, if it's the right business. Again, That's not going to work for everything. But that was a good success story for the amount of money they paid for the coverage they got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another recent one was a multi-level campaign where we did billboards, we sent out emails, we did social media, Google, and then also working on streaming and OTT, OTV, a lot of these, the Hulus and a lot of these things. And we don't have the numbers in yet, but I do know that there's been a significant uptick. This is for direct sales, which there's been an uptick in those sales. So they launched in a new store here in West Michigan, and they had to reach a certain goal by a certain time frame. And I think it was in the first 6 months, and they're more than halfway to that goal in month 2.
Nice.
So that was a combination of a lot of different mechanisms to put that. And now that's a product. We're trying to sell a product, right?
Yeah.
So we did something a little bit different with that.
Correct. Yeah. Different. Not every campaign can't be the same.
Exactly.
A quick question on the PR success type. What type of businesses do you think is a new business the best fit? Were you promoting an open house when they opened, or
so this one
would be a good fit for that kind of scenario?
Yeah, so definitely, if there's a new business out there, 100% should be doing a press release. 100%.
Okay.
This particular one was unique because they were renovating an older historic building.
Yep.
And they were putting multiple businesses in this historic building. So we had the piece that was talking about the actual building, which is called The Corner. It's historically called The Corner, and it's on a corner. So they stuck with the historical name. But then within the building, they have multiple businesses. So the renovation was one piece of it. And now as the businesses start to open, we're talking about open houses. We're talking about, shows that are happening in the theater performance space within it and things like that. So for businesses that are doing open houses, they have a new product, they are moving locations, they are just opening. Those are some really good things to talk about. Now,
a key thing there that they have a storefront. Like new businesses, something more industrial manufacturing, or B2B is a little different, but this one's consumer based, so they have a storefront. So do you think that element is also a good fit for the PR work?
I think consumer based, but maybe not necessarily a storefront. Meaning, if you're providing a service and it's a newer service to the community, and it's not something you would walk in and say, oh, I want to purchase this at a storefront, but it has an actual service, then that's another thing that you could do a
Something that
release
comes
about.
to mind is a mom who's doing the charcuterie board services. Like she's starting a new business doing those from her home. That's not a storefront, but that's a cool, hot, in-demand thing. So trying to drum up a press release about that would be an interesting approach. Okay, cool.
Yeah, definitely. And something that, I mean, I can usually tell if somebody comes to me and they have an idea if the media is going to be interested in that or not.
Okay.
You know, if it's old news or it's been done before, or if it's not anything that's of value to their general audience, or it's very specific, then that makes a difference too. So here's another example. There's a lot of home renovation stuff, right? So a lot of businesses are out there doing home renovations. Well, there might be, if you're in tune with the media cycle, if there's something coming up that's talking about, it's a springtime is a great time to talk about home renovations. So if you are a new company, you're in that realm, I would put something out in the spring and say, this is what we can offer, yada, 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 right? And then maybe you could get on a TV or radio station saying, oh, this is the service we provide. Here's the value of it. It's not more of commercial. It's more of an education type thing, right?
Yeah.
Because there's value in that knowledge of what you can provide as a service provider.
What about a business that, just out of curiosity, a business that maybe has been around a while and is it something, the spring thing has me thinking about a couple clients of mine. Do you think that they can still tap into that PR and get provide some content to the news channels in this, like a spring, something related to home renovation? Do you think that they can, an established business can take advantage of that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and clients that we've worked with together. So let's say that there is a something trending in the market in the pet space, let's say hypothetically. Let's say that there's a new dog virus that's happening. Okay. Well, if you're working with a vet, and that vet is very well known and he's been out in the public space many, many times, but there's something happening that person's an expert in, put some information out about that and say, you know, this vet's office is recognizing that this is a problem. Here are some things to watch for. Here's some things to combat. And who knows, that TV station might pick it up and say, we'd love to talk to you more. This has been an issue. So absolutely. Don't think that if you've been in business for a long time that you can't take advantage of those types of things, but it's got to be relevant. It's got to be something that makes sense.
Yep. That makes sense to me. Awesome. So the two campaigns you shared, one was the PR and then one was more of a product based. Which one did you like best? Which one which one's more fun for you? Or is it just,
I like them both for different reasons. I just love putting the plan together, seeing it happen and seeing the results. Like, it just gets me excited. I mean, I love the PR end of things because I really like working with the media, and it brings me joy to see my clients in front of the media in a positive way.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool. But then when you're doing a multi-tiered campaign and you start to see the results of those come in and you see the numbers, then you're like, yes. And then that's the other thing though, too, like if the numbers aren't coming in where you want them to, you can pivot, you know, you don't have to do that. But the one thing that I will say, and I know I was going to mention this further down, is you got to stay consistent. You know, I've also had clients where they're like, we're going to try this and we're going to try this and we do this for 10 days and we do this for 10 days. That is not going to work. You got to give it some time. You got to give it some space. You got to give it some enough backing to see if it's going to work truly or not. And 10 days is not enough time. 2 weeks, maybe even a month is not enough time sometimes. You know, you got to be consistent. Back to what I said in the beginning, be consistent and stick with it, basically. Repetition.
Yeah. I used to tell people the repetition thing. For some reason, there's certain people who have wanted to change like their slogan or change, I forget what it is, but I had a really good mentor one time tell me, she said, about the time you are sick to death of your own slogan, like you're so bored with it, is just about the time it starts penetrating.
Yeah.
It starts to get relevant. So your tagline or your slogan or your messaging, whatever we want to call it, you can't abandon it just because you're
Right.
bored of it.
Right. I mean,
Uh,
here's a great example of that. The Pure Michigan campaign. That Pure Michigan campaign was around for over 10 years. And us in Michigan might have recognized it, but we were proud of it, right? Like that was a really, really good campaign
yeah.
that brought a lot of tourism dollars into the state. Well, then they went out. I mean, I've done a lot in the tourism industry as well. And so then they went out to different states and started doing the same thing. So now like the nation recognizes Pure Michigan. So
Yeah.
you don't want to get rid of it internally if you're still branching out, because the Midwest region is a great region for us to get tourism. So
Mhm,
why
mhm.
not push it? So
Yeah, that's a great example. And we love that. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, I think if you live in Michigan, you've heard the commercial,
yeah.
you know the saying, when I post something from the lake in the summer, that's one of my hashtags,
Hashtag
right?
for sure.
Um,
I mean, I still use it.
heck
Yeah.
yeah. Heck yeah. I have this crazy post I did way back in the day of when we had our farm, and it's well known that in the spring farms are very muddy. And I took a picture of our calves out in they're like knee deep in the mud, and I put Pure Michigan mud. And that was
Yeah. I mean, I live literally 1 minute from Lake Michigan. I love where we live, by the way. And so we go there often. We take the dog, we go, walk the beach and stuff. And I at least once a month, I probably post something on my personal page about
yeah,
that, Pure
yeah,
Michigan.
for sure. It's definitely penetrated within
Mm-hmm.
the state. So that's cool that they took it and kept it and went regional with it. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we're both from West Michigan. We've talked a little about that. How important is it for West Michigan businesses to tailor their marketing strategies to the local community? And what are some effective ways you think that we can do that? Because I think I think West Michigan is a unique place. I
Mm-hmm.
think it has some unique characteristics. What are some ways that you think people can modify their marketing to tap into those unique characteristics of West Michigan?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I thought about a lot about this too. As I mentioned earlier in this podcast, I I've worked in a lot of regions in West Michigan and lived in a lot of areas. And while each one has kind of their own personality, there are some core things that are solid about the West Michigan market, which might be different than the east side of the state, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For a number of reasons. So I think first of all, I think it's extremely important, your original question, how important is it? Extremely important that you are tapping into the right messaging, right? So the other thing I wanted to say is that I think it depends on the product or service you're providing and the target audience. So let's assume that the audience is West Michigan, which we are assuming that, and whether it is a service or a product and how you're going to go about that. So here's an example that I kind of put together and of a successful story. So a roofing company, and we were kind of talking about, home building and things like that.
Yeah.
So you're a roofing company in West Michigan. You have a certain zone. You don't want to go outside of the Grand Rapids market, let's say. Well, within the Grand Rapids market, you're not going to promote to brand new home developments, right? That makes
Right.
zero sense. They have brand new homes. So you want to find those target areas in West Michigan that people are going to identify with, that maybe have the means to update their roofs. And then, people think that print is dead. Print is not dead. Okay. How many mailings did you get this political season? 1 million, right? Because they work and people might not actually look at them or read them. I mean, they'll look at them, but might not actually read them, but they see it, right? So let's say you do a direct mail campaign, you're a roofing company. I live in a little bit of an older neighborhood. A lot of the houses in the neighborhood within the last 5 years have gotten new roofs. We knew we needed a new roof. We got something in the mail. We started thinking about this. So anyways, my point with saying that is do your research, find your target audience, hit them with what's going to make the most sense. So if I am a flower company, or something like that. What is the best way for me to reach my customers? Another good area in the West Michigan market is social media, and the ease and use of social media is so great because you can narrow it down to a zip code. You can narrow it down to a certain area. You can put some beautiful pictures up there of your flowers, if that's what it is that you're promoting. You can pick certain demographics as far as female, right? Male, age demos, all those things. So, and then the one other thing about the West Michigan market too is that I think is very, very important is relationship building. Okay, you can do as much traditional marketing as you want, and that's going to take you a certain distance. But if you are in a service provider, relationships are huge. Heating and cooling companies, there's a million heating and cooling companies in West Michigan. My neighbor happens to be a heating and cooling company, right? So they have an own one. So the relationship I have with them, every time we have an issue, we're going to call them first. Web development's another great example. Right? So there's a lot. I mean, everybody needs a website. You have to have a website to run a business. You can and should, and I know you do, push out information about your services. But the more you build those relationships, the more people are going to come to you and say, I like you, Rebecca. We're going to use your service.
Well, that is my favorite is a repeat customer, somebody who I've supported for 10 years. They now their church needs a website, and I'm the first one they call, or they're starting a second business and they just call me up and say, we need you to do this just like you did the other one, and they're just like, go do it. Like those are great.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you on the loyalty of people in West Michigan, the relationship, how critical that relationship is. But something also is, I think that loyalty is valued, but I think customer service is valued.
Yes,
maybe more so than the East Side. Or maybe it's everywhere. I don't know, but there's a real like hardworking, loyalty based mentality if you take care of them.
And word gets around.
Yes,
if it's not
good and bad.
Yeah,
right. My husband has had to talk to I don't know how many heating and cooling companies over the years, and he will leave a company if he has bad service. Like if he calls and has a question about a bill or an invoice, he tells me horror stories all the time of how crappy he was treated, and he takes his business elsewhere because of it. And that's after being loyal to that company for 10 years. So business owners, that is the loyalty of West Michigan. You can lean into that for marketing, but please don't throw away customer service to try as a cost savings, because that will hurt things in the long run. So there's kind of an overlap there that I noticed, and I'm curious. I was curious if you had seen it as well. But yeah, the relationships are a huge factor in any business.
Yeah.
But it costs a lot to gain new customers. You better get your crap together, get your act together, and take care of them to keep them.
Well, and the other thing I've noticed is for let's say the company's coming in from a different area and they're trying to work in the West Michigan market. I mean, I've heard this over and over again because I also worked a lot with chambers here in the Grand Rapids Chamber, Holland Chamber, Grand Haven, and Muskegon, all the major chambers here. And a lot of times new businesses say that it's really hard to get into this market, or it's hard to crack this market. But that's where the relationships come in, number one. Two, it's knowing and understanding your market, right? So, like, for example, let's say you're in Holland, but you're trying to promote something to Muskegon. You're not going to talk about tulips and wooden shoes to somebody in Muskegon. If you're in Holland, that's an identifier. That's something that people are accustomed to. They know the value of that in that community. Not everybody is Dutch, but I mean, Holland, that's what they're known for, right?
Yeah.
And so kind of there's a lot of examples like that. So know your audience, establish those relationships, keep at the forefront, because you never know when somebody's going to need a new roof, pool cleaned, a website, a service, a widget, whatever, until they need it. Right.
Yeah, for sure. So that's awesome. I think it's interesting. There's certain things that we are aligned on, and then it's also good to hear different perspectives. So that's really good. Well, let's talk about, you touched on AI a little. What do you think the future of marketing looks like? Because just in the 20 years that we've done it, we've seen a major shift. My favorite, well, what you brought up was, the mailboxes are emptier than they've ever been. So, bringing in a layer of a touch point to print media is actually more effective now because there's less competition in the mailbox.
Right.
So it's interesting how that has ebbs and flowed. It's not dead. Printed signage is still huge. I just vehicle signage. I just did a post last week showing a comparison of a marketing win and a marketing loss because of the size of the signage on the van of a commercial van. There was one I could not read 2 car lengths away. It was tiny.
Yeah.
And then a couple, when we consulted a couple of customers and I had a couple examples, like the bigger, the more obnoxious, the more
memorable,
readable, memorable.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to spend money on it, do it right.
Yeah. And that's so true. That's the same thing when people say, okay, people have strong opinions about billboards, radio, and TV. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it depends on your product or what you're trying to push. If it makes sense for you to be on billboards, I'm not going to say everybody should be on billboards, but I'm telling you what, for certain things, it's extremely effective. Yes. And so, when we talk about print and we talk about these different things, industry magazines. Okay. If you are into music and the Review magazine is a great West Michigan music, you're going to pick that up and you're going to see what's in there because that's of value to you, because that's of interest to you. So if you are a company that sells guitars, that's a good place where you're going to want to be in. Or if you're putting on shows or events, that's a good place for you to be in. I know in the market that I'm in here too, like, it astounds me how well yard signs work. Yes. I know that sounds super elementary, but it's not. Like, there's a company here that did Christmas lights, right? Yeah. And yard signs everywhere. I'm telling you what, I called them and I got a quote because of their yard sign. I didn't see it anywhere else but through yard signs.
And one of the things that I recently was sharing with a company, I'm like, they do more rural area. And I said, okay, so how many signs do you put up every job? And they're like, well, usually 1. I'm like, okay, so you're in a more rural area. Would it benefit? Don't you think maybe you should also go to the next busiest intersection and put a sign? Like, you need to, like, sometimes more signs is better, especially if they're trying to target a certain, but they were more rural. And the cost of those signs is, a little bit cheaper. But people overlook that. They don't think that that's as effective. But signage is still, especially for home service-based type stuff, big time.
The other thing you do have to keep in mind, though, is there's a lot of rules and regulations about signage in cities. So you got to be careful where you put them and all that good stuff. But billboards and print direct mail campaigns and things like that, I think are still of value. But when we're talking about, like, what does the future look like? AI, we touched on that a little bit. I think that's going to help some businesses significantly, and I don't think it's going to have any impact on other businesses. So, but if that's something that would work good for you, then that's something you should look into. The other big thing right now that every media company is trying to push is the streaming television, OTV or STV. So that's when you're tapping into those media platforms like Hulu or Disney or Prime or Amazon, where ads are actually being served, or you're watching it on your computer. That's another area which is terrifying and also exciting. Terrifying as a consumer, but exciting as a marketing person. How granular that they can get down to know your habits, to know what you like, to know all of those things about you, so that when we plug it in and we have a certain thing we want to promote, these are the characteristics we're looking for, and that ad's going to be served to you, right? And then it could be reserved to you again if you click on it, you look at it closer, whatever the case may be. So that's going to continue to be really popular, I think, moving forward.
I think it was a few years ago. I must have had a free Spotify account, and I remember our local, the Family Fare grocery store chain. I remember hearing an ad for them on the app. I don't think I heard any ads. I think I pay for it now, so I don't have the ads on everybody. But that one, I remember that one catching me off guard and being like, because before that, all the ads were national companies.
You can do it local now.
But this was a local grocery store running an ad the audio streaming service. And so
Yeah.
I remember it caught me off guard. I'm like, that was really interesting. And it's been a couple of years, and I don't remember if there was another layer to it. Like I was close to the store. I was going, like, I don't remember if there was a geo-targeting factor involved where I was nearby. There was another layer to it. It's been a couple of years, so it's been around a while.
Yeah. But that's another good point.
Do you think that's affordable for small businesses, those different options?
I do. I want to just mention the geo-targeting real quick because I don't think people realize this. So Home Depot is a great example, right? Home Depot or a larger department store that has a national chain. A lot of them do geo-targeting, right? So you go into Walmart or an Ulta or Home Depot and you have your phone on and you have certain apps open, it recognizes you're there. And then lo and behold, the next day you get served an ad from there. I mean, that's because they know that you walked in there with your phone and they're serving you back the ad. Now, you asked about affordability. I think
like the other like a streaming service ad, if for some reason like the local thing, like we're trying to keep our focus. We serve West Michigan clients, so we're trying to talk about things that are more relevant to West Michigan. So those streaming platforms are not the first place I would think to run an ad for local businesses. So do you think that the local option within those platforms is affordable and something that the local business in West Michigan should consider?
I think it is affordable. Maybe not small businesses just getting started, but definitely medium-sized businesses. It's a lot like how cable used to be and still is, right? So cable ads you get way more cable ads than you would like your local network TV for the rate. So for example, if you wanted to go on a network television, your ABC, NBC, CBS, the cost per ad for those are way more expensive than they would be if you did a package for, let's say you wanted to be on news media. So you're on MSNBC, Fox News, all these different news channels, because whatever it is that you're pushing or selling appeals to those people. You could probably get 500 ads for the price of maybe 100 ads locally. So, the price is pretty good, but I think it's the repetition and saturation that you have. You're not going to want to run that for a week and be like, hell, I didn't get anything. I mean, that's not going to make a difference. And actually, that was one thing I did want to kind of make mention too. If you're on a tight budget, and you don't feel like you can consistently support financially something over 6 months, what I would recommend doing is maybe do something 2 weeks of every month or 3 weeks of every month that's going to help get your product or service in front of people. Don't do something for a month and use up your entire budget and then be done with it, because that's not going to get you anywhere. Unless for some reason that 1 month was so overwhelming and did such a good job that you can't keep up with it. But that's not super probable.
Yeah, for sure. How do you, and I think the other thing my thought would be like those streaming services is kind of a newer or a trend, something that wasn't always available. And I think layering that with other touch points.
Yes.
I think that's the other thing is you still have to do, face-to-face referral network marketing. You still have to do something on social media because people are looking for you there. You have to have some sort of a website presence. You have to you've got to be found on Google Maps and Apple Maps. Like you've got to layer things. So it's a building block, right? We have some foundational things we tell people. So you're not going to go do a streaming ad first. You're going to do all those other things first, and you're going to layer things on so that you can get more touch points. I think that's an element we want to keep. Even though there's trends and new opportunities, you've really got to build your foundation first. Would you agree that's true?
For sure, 100%. Yeah, and there's so many things nowadays that you can do that are really cost effective. There was like marketing tools. That was kind of another topic that we've talked about before. So email programs. If you are an industry where you're trying to garner leads and get in front of people, build a database, there's very cost-effective email programs out there like MailChimp or Constant Contact. There's a million of them, but those are two that are most widely well known. And email your customers once a month, once a week, depending on what it is that you need, but be consistent. Don't do it every 6 months. And it doesn't have to be a sales pitch. It could be an educational pitch. It could be talking about something else that's going on in the industry. It could be anything, but as long as you're being in front of them, that's good.
There are a couple of marketing agencies that have put out a lot of research data. They do a volume, quite a bit of volume, and have they're sharing their data. And one of the things that they were showing was the ROI on different marketing efforts. And email marketing is still a huge driver of return on investment and sales, because it's still reaching, it's your direct connection with customers that you have.
Yeah.
So I do want to dive into the tools for sure next.
Yeah.
But I think you're right about that, is that email marketing, even like if you were to develop a newsletter or you served up a flavor of the week, or, there's something you can do that's more fun and enjoyable. It doesn't have to be a hard sales thing all the time.
Right.
There's a lot of different strategy that we can develop.
Yeah, that's right. The beauty of the email marketing though too is if you have a product that you're selling that's online, you can track that data, right? You can see how well it's working. It's very data driven. And if you are just doing a service or trying to get leads or trying to be in front of people, you can also go and see how many click-throughs did you get, who clicked through. You can retarget those people that click through and kind of touch them, have another touch point with them. And then as if somebody's put something in the shopping cart but didn't quite check out, you can retarget those people as well. So there's a lot of value with that.
There's a ton of data. Oh man, we could do a whole hour of data, right? There's so much. So we touched on tools. What are some of the best tools or platforms that you find indispensable, that if customers aren't doing a lot yet, where should they spend their marketing efforts, or what tools are you personally loving and recommending?
So again, it depends on the level of the business, but one that a lot of people use because they can't afford a big design company is something like Canva, right? So Canva's super user friendly, very easy to do. It can create multiple types of different designs, whether you want it for social, a poster, a mailer, whatever you want it for. It's super easy to use. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced and you have a designer, obviously they're going to be using the Adobe Suite and be expert at that. So if you're on the designing end of things, so that's pretty significant. The other two things that we kind of touch on, but I just want to, this might not necessarily be a tool, but it leads to the tools. The two things I think you must have as a business owner is a website so people can find you, and if it's relevant, social media platforms, depending on which area it's in. So sometimes people will just go on social and try to find somebody. And if you don't have a social page, or they can't see what people are saying about you, they might not use you because they don't think that you're legit. So if you are doing that and you don't feel like you have a lot of time to manage that, Hootsuite is a good program or tool that you can use for social media, where you can plan things out on multiple platforms. Very user friendly. Again, there's a million different types of tools like this that can help manage your social media. HubSpot, a lot of people use HubSpot as well for a lot of different things as well. So those are kind of some key things that I think really help. And again, it depends on your product. The other one thing that I want to say is make sure that you have a good sales database or a mechanism to track your sales, to track your leads, to track those communications. Again, multiple platforms out there that you can use, but that's a really key tool for your business, depending on the type of business you have.
There's, it's one of those things that we assume now. We assume that people are collecting this data and tracking. We just discovered ourselves internally here that there was a key element that we weren't tracking in our database. And it was like, how could I have overlooked this? And I'll just share it real quick. It was the anniversary of when we launched a new website for a customer. Somebody, when when they've had their website for 3 or 4 or 5 years, I should be recognizing that that anniversary, touching base with them to do, a review or whatever. And we've overlooked that. It's been, I can't believe it. But I had a couple of different customers who didn't have a customer database recently. Everything was pen and paper, or it was all they had was their point of sale, and they picked the cheapest point of sale they could, so it stored the least amount of data. I think one was a grocery store, like a little local grocery store, and a curated store of things, and one was a nail salon. They had the cheapest point of sale, so it was just getting, when they swiped their card, I think it was maybe the name, but no email, maybe the name and phone number. But it's because they were cutting corners, and so they were missing out on that, because we were going to do a whole campaign for them to get more Google reviews, and we couldn't use.
They didn't have any contact information.
They have hundreds of clients, and we couldn't reach back out to them.
Yeah,
I was shocked, but it's things that people don't think about.
Yeah.
It's overlooked, I guess. And so thank you for bringing that up, as the sales database, because I think we just assume that people know that you need that, but they don't.
And if you're just starting, you're not sure which way to go, and these things do cost, they're not all free. I mean, at least create a sales spreadsheet or do something to capture people's information, that way you have something.
Okay. So here's a dilemma. What do we recommend to customers for? I have recommendations, but what do we recommend to customers who trying to run their business on a phone or tablet? They don't have actually a computer. So can you imagine?
My recommendation is get a computer.
Thank you. I have had several of that, and we couldn't figure out why they couldn't open something, or it was like they were trying to run the business on a phone. And
that's the other thing that we shouldn't overlook. Microsoft Office. If you don't have Word or Excel, I mean, that is numero uno. You got to have some kind of mechanism to communicate with other people, or write out thoughts, or write out plans, or do spreadsheets. How are you doing your budget? What are you doing that in? I mean, that's another good example. QuickBooks.
Yeah. Right. So you mentioned, people back in the day the first thing they would get was a business card, and they would have like their name, their logo, their email address. And so folks that are trying to run their business from a phone, who don't have a business card, they'll do a website, they'll do whatever. But the email address that they're using, it's a Gmail or a Yahoo, or for God's sake, it's a Hotmail, right? Like what are we doing?
Yeah.
If you want to present yourself in a professional light, you need a branded presence, right? The whole package. You need the email address, the logo, the business name, the website, all of that, the business cards, all of it. But I think people try to skip and cut corners. Now, I will say that one of my favorite clients is one that has established the business and has built it all on word of mouth. And they have clients coming in, but they're ready to build the online presence because they haven't needed it yet. And that's great, because they've proven that the product or service that they're selling is valuable and that people will come back. So now they can grow. But when you try to cut corners and you skip some of those things, if you want to be taken professional, you have to have all that little stuff. So it's easily overlooked, but I still come across it. It's wild.
Yeah. And that's a good point for smaller businesses, right? So I'm a small to medium-sized business myself. And I just another quick story. When I started the company, I had CMFmarketing.com. Okay. And then as I told you guys earlier, for 5 years, went back into the corporate world. I didn't think I was going to go back to CMF marketing. So I let my URL go bye-bye. Went back to try to buy it again, and somebody had snatched it, right? So they wanted close to $3,000 for that URL. Yeah. And I'm a small business. I'm not paying $3,000 for the URL. Right. However, I get every single other CMF marketing that you could get, .org, .net, .shop, whatever. And so I work with a lot of nonprofits. So when I tell them website, cmfmarketing.org. I often had to say .org because people just normally do com. Because I work with so many nonprofits, they don't notice it as much, but other businesses do say, oh, it's a .org. You know, are you a nonprofit? No, I'm not a nonprofit, but I don't want, go in and tell the whole story to them again.
So
but,
buy the domain name and keep it.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Well,
Yes.
And that leads us into my kind of my last question is advice for beginners. Was advice for beginners for people wanting to improve their business marketing, but also for people who are starting out in the marketing. There's a lot of college kids that are looking at marketing and trying to do that. So what are some, we just touched on a bunch of the basics for businesses. Is there anything else that you would give someone advice for someone who's beginning to be serious about their marketing strategy? And then kind of number 2, advice for people getting into it.
Yeah. I did talk kind of a lot of little nuggets throughout this conversation about that, but if you're, just getting started in your marketing journey, I would hope that you know what kind of target audience you need to speak to. And if you don't, do some research to figure out your target audience and what marketing avenues would speak best to them. Okay. So if you are trying to get, young 18 to 24-year-olds, the mechanism to do that is going to be different than 60 to 70-year-olds, right?
So better be on TikTok, right?
Yes. Do you go on TikTok for sure? Talk about social media influencers, all those things, So make sure you, we didn't even touch on that. We could do a whole segment on social media, but anyways, figure out your target audience and what the best avenue is to speak to them, right? Then put a plan together that is consistent and has longevity. And I touched on this as well. Don't just try something for a few weeks, give up and try something different. Try something for enough time to see if it's going to work or not. And make sure you have those other support systems and mechanisms to help sustain that, like some of the programs that we talked about. Make sure that those are in place before you start pushing information out. And then, from a budget standpoint, because I was like, how much is this going to cost? Well, you got to put a little money in to make a little money, right? So the good news about small to medium-sized businesses, you could do a monthly marketing budget from anywhere to, depends on how much you want to do yourself, but $1,000 on up.
Yeah, there's something I saw recently. I got to jump in here a minute. There was something I saw recently that you really need to put 5 to 10% of your sales into marketing. And I think people are not realizing that investment you really do need to invest. I feel like that's a 5 to 10% of your annual sales as a marketing budget.
I've heard 3 to 6, but I mean, 5
and this is
10,
national. I think you need to be willing to commit something in that range because maybe 3% is reasonable to start with. And then as you see success and as you scale, then you can, the 10% thing was big. And I think one of those national companies who did a survey again, they showed what the most successful, what percent the most successful agencies were spending. Because it's not always more. Because sometimes people that are spending way more are throwing it down the toilet because they're not measuring it very well.
Right. Yeah.
But that more is that successful nugget. And the other little tip I would say is do stuff you can measure. Make sure you're measuring it. So that we can tie back success to your investment. But that percent wise, you got to have something. You got to have something to start with. You've got to earmark something.
For sure. And when I look at some of those most common challenges for businesses when they do their marketing is not investing enough marketing effort or giving it enough time. And a lot of times people say when the economy goes, there's a downturn or this, that, and the other thing, like marketing is the first to go. Marketing should not be the first to go. You can pull back on it a little bit if you have to, but markets ebb and flow, right? Economy ebb and flows. So if you've done nothing and now the markets, the economy's on the upswing, now you got a lot more work to do to get back to where you want to get to.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the best thing I've heard is that consistency piece from you today. I think that's a very critical piece.
Mm-hmm.
Super. And then what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's trying to look at a career in marketing and just starting out? What kind of advice would you give them?
I think for me, it's a follow kind of your passion and what you like to do, right? So when you say, oh, I'm in marketing, there's a million different avenues to marketing, right? You want to be in marketing sales? Do you want to be in marketing design? Do you want to be in PR? Do you want to be in web development? I mean, there's like a million things that fall in the marketing realm.
Yeah.
I mean, I found my niche with promotions and project management and event coordination. And I have a lot of experience in all the other avenues of it. So I think you need to find the area that you enjoy most, right? And then go after it. Also, if we're talking about just people just starting out, you know, if you're just getting out of college, or even if you're not, you know, we have a mutual colleague that is in her maybe 40s that is starting a new career. She went back to school. She's doing new things. She's getting connected with the right people and trying to find those experiences to make sure that that's what she wants to do and that she, you know, she's good at it. So maybe that's doing some things for free. Maybe that's doing an internship. So getting that experience under your belt and just meeting as many people in that industry as you can to find out where you feel most at home.
Yeah. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I have heard or seen is, you know, if there's any, use your existing network and offer to do a project, you know, volunteer somewhere so you can get real world experience, whether it's a nonprofit, an animal shelter, your church, or whatever, wherever you're already a group at your college, a college sorority, whatever group you're involved in. Do a project, a real world thing, and try some stuff out. And that's, to me, then do another one, and then do another one. But I think those are really, getting real world experience is more valuable if you're trying to get hired than just, you know, your classroom projects. I think.
Right. And I've worked with interns for the last 20 years. And honestly, like, I think that is the best experience for people just coming out of college, because you don't even realize what you don't know until you don't know it, right? I mean, this was a common thing that I was running into. It's so simple, but we in the industry, like in the business world, don't even think about this. Like sending an email. What is the best way to send an email? When do you CC somebody? When do you BCC somebody? How do you communicate with somebody? I mean, these are some like elementary things, but you know, you don't know because it's not something you've ever done before if you're just getting out of college.
Yeah. Well, all the college kids text everybody, right? Like, we joke that we both have teenage kids, and we joke that if you want to get a hold of them, don't send them an email. You got to text them.
But I don't even text anymore. I snap. We snap.
Oh, we snap. I'm not on Snap, so I'm a loser. I text them, or I send them Instagram DMs. That's one way I can find my kids. But yeah, they're being able to communicate professionally.
Yes.
Verbally, written, right? Those are some fundamentals that you have to have.
Yeah, bro. Bro.
I love it. Or bro. Yeah. So, Carla, where can people find you?
So they can find me at my website, cmfmarketing.org.
Okay.
And people can also email me at carla@cmfmarketing.org. I'm on Instagram, on Facebook as well. And I always love talking to new customers, new clients, potential clients on, you know, what their marketing needs are, how I can help. And I'm straight up about a lot of things. Like if I think I can help you, I will do my best to help you. If it's not a good fit, I will recommend you to somebody else that would be a really good fit.
Awesome. Well, I will put I'll put all your links in the comments here so that we can connect folks to you. And I appreciate you joining me and talking about all things marketing in West Michigan, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
All right. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.